let's get into holiday gift ideas for knitters. Hi, hello, my name is Allie and I'm an independent graphic designer coming to you from just outside Toronto, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, how it's going, and what it's costing me. But today I actually want to talk about some holiday gift ideas, because whether you are a knitter and your family's always asking you for gift ideas, or you are the family member of the knitter who you're always asking for gift ideas and maybe they're not being super helpful, I've got some ideas that I think might actually be helpful. Now normally I start these videos by telling you what tea I'm drinking, but we're actually going to skip that for now because this is going to become relevant later in the gift list. I also feel like gift giving is a really great opportunity to try to focus on really being deliberate in where we're buying things from and who we're supporting, because these things are total non-necessities, right? It's not like, oh my god, I urgently need this, I can't figure out where else to get it, like I'm just gonna order wherever I can get it fastest. Like, gift giving is not like that. We don't have to be buying anything in particular. So with this list, I've tried to focus on things where either it is from a small business directly, or I'm linking to it from a small business, or a business that is in some way trying to actually do some good in the world and not just make money, because that just feels a bit more in line to me with holiday cheer. Now, all the gift ideas I talk about are going to be linked in the description box down below. And just full disclosure, a few of those links are going to be affiliate links, which means that if you make a purchase through that link, I get a little cut of it, which is a really nice way to support the work that I'm doing on this channel. And those links are marked in the description box with an asterisk. But also, like, if you happen to find a good deal, buy wherever you want. Also, if by the time that you see this, anything that I've linked is out of stock where I've currently linked it, just do a Google search. I'm sure you'll be able to find it or something very comparable somewhere else in stock for you. And I'm posting this kind of mid-late November in hopes of giving everyone the best chance of anything you order getting to you before the holidays, but obviously I can't guarantee anything. So hurry, order sooner than later. And if you're ordering late, may the odds be ever in your favor. Okay, now I'm gonna be dividing these gift options up into different sort of budget groups. So we're gonna start with gifts that fall in the sort of $25 to $100 range. Then we're gonna do some stocking stuffers, so all things under $25. And then at the end, we're gonna get into some big ticket items if you're looking to really splurge on the knitter in your life. All right, first up, entertainment media. And now don't worry, I'm gonna get more specific, but we're gonna use this as our umbrella to get started. Because here's the thing, I know that I and a lot of other knitters are not looking to just sit here knitting in some sort of meditative silence. I'm sure that would be lovely if we are so enlightened, but most of us are not. Most of us are watching knitting podcasts, for example. We might be watching TV. But I've also found a higher than average correlation of knitters and readers. And I, as an avid reader knitter myself, I have spent time trying to figure out how best to read and knit at the same time. And we're actually gonna come back to that later. But as you can imagine, it's a little bit difficult to read a book and knit at the same time, right? But you know what's a really great alternative to that is audiobooks. And I think that audiobooks are also one of those things that some people are already really dedicated users of, but I think that there are a lot of people who are interested in trying it out in theory, but get stuck on the cost of it. And a lot of local library systems do let you borrow audiobooks, but of course you are always then limited by what is available when. So this is where I have actually two different options to recommend depending on which format of these things sounds better to you. So the first one is Libro FM. So Libro basically works the same way as Amazon Audible does, where you were buying credits and a credit gets you an audiobook. But when you set up your account on Libro FM, you get to pick an independent bookstore that your purchase is actually going to get funneled through. So that bookstore actually makes money off your purchase instead of Jeff Bezos. And this is a gift that you can really scale up or down to suit your budget, because they sell packs of different numbers of credit. They're about $20 Canadian per audiobook, or about $15 US. Another option, if you want a service that doesn't use the credit route, but instead uses more of a Netflix style streaming service route, I'm going to recommend Everand, which has audiobooks and it also has ebooks and magazines. So unlike Libro FM, you're not buying a permanent ownership of something, you are just streaming it on demand. You can also listen to as many as you want in a month for the same subscription fee. So if you're a really avid listener, this is a super cost-effective option because it's $12.99 Canadian a month or $11.99 US. So if you're listening to multiple audiobooks in a month for that, what a good deal. And so again, as a gift giver, you can decide how many months you want to cover this subscription for. Now, lastly, in the entertainment media category, if your knitter really has no interest in audiobooks, but they do watch channels like mine, if you see them watching YouTube videos and you see them watching ads, might I recommend gifting them YouTube Premium, because not having those ads interrupt things is such a game changer. So if you wish to gift them that peace in their knitting podcast watching, you can do that for $12.99 Canadian a month or $13.99 US, which normally those numbers would be opposite. The US one would be the lower number. I'm not sure. Sorry, Americans. You're probably a more valuable ad audience, so you have to make up for more of that. I don't know. All right, next up, the first and only item in this gift list that is actually sponsored. So this portion of the video is sponsored by Hooks and Needles. So Hooks and Needles is a crafting subscription box. So they have a knitting version, a crochet version, and an amigurumi version. And this subscription box is designed to work for crafters of all levels. So whether you have a knitter who's sort of just starting to get into knitting, or if they're looking to just sort of shake up the kind of things they knit, looking for someone to point them in a new direction, or if they're interested in taking up crochet, I feel like that would be a really great use of Hooks and Needles. And who doesn't like getting mail? So Hooks and Needles sent me this box, and I actually haven't opened it yet because I thought it would be fun to do an unboxing. Okay, so right at the top, so this is the little magazine booklet that comes with every box. Inside there are patterns. So every box gives you 3 different patterns that you can choose between to make with the yarn that comes in your box. And they're kind of geared toward having like a more beginner-friendly option, an in-between option, and a more advanced option. So regardless of where your crafter is in their skill journey, they can find a project for them. And one of the cool things about the Hooks and Needles box is that they actually have a set sequence that they send you the boxes in. So you've never missed the best parts of it, you know what I mean? You've never joined too late. And it also allows them to really help you gradually build up your skill set in a deliberate way over time. All right, so next on top in our box, we have a couple of tools. So we have a double pointed needle, and we also have a pair of fixed circulars. There's a little set of tapestry needles. There's also a little baggie of buttons. I think this would be for the Mug Cozy project. And then, ooh, I'm reminded why I picked this box. It was because of these scissors. These are heavy, like these feel nice. Obviously this would not be a knitting subscription box without some yarn. So we've got 3 balls of 100% unshrinkable, so superwash, extra fine merino wool. So each of these balls is 50 grams. If like me, you're someone who likes to look into the supply chain of the yarn that you're buying to make sure it's produced ethically, you'll be happy to know, as I am, that this is mulesing free yarn. This feels like a pretty like substantial haul. I'm pretty like, all right. These boxes are $33.97 each, but you can save 20% off your first box with my code ALLIE20. You can send as many months of this as you'd like. You can pause and unpause the subscription as much as you'd like. I also think that if your budget is the cost of one box of this is a wonderful standalone gift on its own. All right, continuing the theme that I think that a disproportionate number of knitters are also readers. If you have a knitter who you see trying and struggling, kind of makeshifting ways to read while they're knitting, or is just expressed wishing that they could read while knitting but hasn't really tried it out, I recommend a nice book stand. So I have like a really ugly plastic version of this that I'm like, I could have done better here. And the better that I found is from One Yard Workshop on Etsy. Look at this beautiful book holder. So this sits on your lap and hold your book open for you while you're knitting. So if you're just working on something that's sort of basic stockinette or something where you don't really need to be looking at it the whole time that you're knitting, this allows you to read while you're knitting. And this is something that I actually do. I love doing this. It does kind of require pairing the right kind of project with the right kind of book, but when you get both of those things together and you can read while you knit, it is magical. And I will say that even if someone is not trying to read while they knit, this would also make a really great iPad holder if you or your knitter likes to use an iPad to look at digital patterns while you're knitting. The shop also lets you personalize it if you want, which I think is just always a fun way to make a gift feel like a little bit more special, right? It's like, this was just for you. So the standard version of this costs between $45 and $59 US depending on the wood finish you want and whether you want to add personalization. But if you want to splurge for the fancy version with a cushion to make it a little extra cozy, sit a little better balance on your lap, and have a little compartment for all the knitting notions, all the little tools that go with your project, I feel like that would be so nice. That version runs between $60 and $67 US. I'm really looking at this wishing that I had this version and not my ugly plastic one. Now, obviously this version is a bit more of an investment in the idea of reading while knitting. So if you or your knitter just really want to try out the idea and you're not sure how you're going to feel about it, the sort of stocking stuffer version of this is this little book thingy that you can get for $9.99 Canadian or $7.99 US. All right, so my next gift idea is, you may have guessed, what I'm wearing. And this is actually something that I made and I'm launching today. So like I said at the top, I am professionally a graphic designer, so I love to make things, design things, illustrate things, hand letter things. And I was like, I would like to make some knitting related merch, but that is, I guess, what I like to call like sneaky merch. You know, I wanted to make something that I would want to wear just because I like it on its own. And it's just like a fun little side thing to know where it came from, like in an if you know, you know sort of way. So I was like, what would I, as someone who like doesn't need to wear a shirt about my own YouTube channel, like what would I want to have a shirt of that reflected knitting? So I started doodling and created this sort of maker badge that has all the sort of trappings of someone who makes things. So of course, coming at this as a knitter, there are knitting needles. There's also a crochet hook if you're a crocheter, or just like me, a knitter who makes mistakes and uses crochet hooks to fix them. There's also scissors and needles and measuring tapes, all of which obviously come into play if you are a knitter, but also if you were a sewist. I liked the idea of this being something that could be a little bit more broad than just knitting, just as people who like to make stuff. I feel like these are sort of the trappings of our making things. So I created this design and it's now available on both a baseball raglan, like this one, which I think is just so fun, but also on a regular t-shirt. And I'm partnering with like a print on demand service to have these produced because it's just not really viable for me to like purchase a ton of inventory in every possible size. But as a designer, like I have experience with print on demand services and I really don't like how digital printing works on garments. So if you've ever ordered a shirt from a print on demand service, you've probably noticed the way that like it just kind of has a different quality and it fades every time that you wash it. I didn't want to be selling things like that, so I spent so much time looking to find a service that would allow me to do embroidery of these designs on these shirts. This is not printed on, this is embroidery thread, which I think just makes it feel so much higher quality. Like, this is not going anywhere. It gives it a really cool kind of like up close texture. I just love it so much. So here you can get a better idea of the full effect. I am wearing a size small. This is all unisex sizing, by the way. And for the t-shirt versions, you can choose your t-shirt color, either black, navy, or white, and then choose whether you want black or white thread embroidered onto it. I also created a second design. So for my test piece for the second design, I actually decided to get white thread embroidered on a white shirt just to see kind of how it would look. Because sometimes I think having just a really sort of subtle embroidered, like same color on same color, can be a really cool effect. So the second design is for those like me who are always like a little bit sad when it's not sweater weather because you want to be wearing your knits. So this shirt says, "I'd be wearing something I knit if it wasn't so hot out," with 2 little knitting needles at the bottom. This is the very subtle white on white embroidery, so obviously only choose that option if you want an effect that subtle, but obviously you can also get the white on black version or the black on white, white on navy, whatever you want for a version that is like fully legible at a distance. I just wanted to be able to show what just the embroidery effect looks like up close. All right, I'll go try this one on for you too. Obviously it's gonna be really hard for you to read this from that distance since it's the white on white, but I just really like this as like functionally a plain white tee that just has this like cheeky little extra that's like, I'm mad that I'm not wearing my sweaters right now. Low key, I'm mad about climate change. For another option, both these designs are also available as stickers. So this is the fun holographic version. There's also versions available that are like regular white, where this is currently holographic. Now this version I haven't peeled off yet, but you can see it actually is like cut to the shape of the design. This is not just like a square sticker. So I'm really excited to use this sticker in my scrapbook when I inevitably make a spread about my YouTube channel. This will be part of that. It would also be great on like a water bottle or a notebook or a computer or whatever. You know what you do with stickers. I don't need to tell you. So these t-shirts, because they're a nice heavyweight material, because they're 100% organic cotton with all the certifications you could possibly want, because they're embroidered rather than digitally printed, these shirts are $32 US, and the baseball tees, which are made of 100% USA cotton and then also embroidered, those are $36 US. And I know how much it sucks to get surprised by high shipping costs at checkout, so I'm just gonna tell you now, you don't have to worry about that. Shipping to the US is $4.99, Canada's $5.99, and elsewhere it depends a bit on where you are, but the highest it ever goes up to is $9.99. The stickers also come in both 3x3 and 4x4 inch sizes, so this is a 3x3, this is a smaller one, and they run $5 for the little white version, $5.50 for the bigger white version, and $6 for the little holographic, $6.50 for the bigger holographic. So these are my very direct contributions to the gift giving options. All right, now one more sort of reading adjacent gift idea, and then I swear we're gonna move on. But I just think there are so many options. Even if your knitter is not like a reader per se, there are books of patterns, there are magazines, there are all of these things that can sort of complement the craft that do not involve like sitting down and reading a novel. So one option for this is identifying a category of thing that your knitter likes to knit a lot, and then getting them a pattern book that is focused to that. So for example, if your knitter loves to knit sweaters, I recommend Amy Herzog's Ultimate Sweater Book. So this goes for $32.99 Canadian or $25.99 US, and it is just like the definitive guide to all of these sort of like basic sweater constructions that you can then kind of use as a blank canvas for whatever you want to do. There's a ton of different patterns that give you numbers for tons of different yarn weights. So it's not like you have to have this weight of yarn to knit this pattern, and it tells you how to make all these different modifications. Like, I think it's really just such a good guide to learning to make the kinds of sweaters that you like the best. I just feel like this one's a really good thing to have in your library if you're a big sweater knitter. If your knitter loves to knit socks, I think that 52 weeks of socks is a really great option. There's also a volume 2 if yours already has volume 1. So the first volume of this goes for $24.99 US or $19.99 Canadian. This is another one where it's like, why is the Canadian one cheaper? That never happens. I don't know. They're both a paperback. I checked. But this book is full of beautiful sock patterns. So if your knitter is always just plowing through socks, this is a great way to keep them fully sock patterned for a whole year, possibly, probably more. There are also some great magazine options for knitters. So the first one I'm going to recommend, Pom Pom, is sadly being discontinued, but because it's being discontinued, there's a big sale going on their website where all of their back issues, the print versions, are on like mega sale. So I recommend going and picking up some of those because these magazines are mostly just collections of patterns and like really cool, interesting, like funky, fun, trendy patterns that a lot of knitters would like but might shy away from purchasing the pattern online because these are things where to purchase the one pattern you have to buy the whole thing. Give them the gift of the magazine, of leafing through this beautiful booklet of all the pattern photos, deciding which ones they might want to make. It's just fun. It's just pretty to look at. There's so many nice patterns. I've made a pattern out of one of these before. Had a good time. Loved looking at it. In terms of magazine options that do still exist, if you want to do an actual subscription, Uppercase Magazine. So this is a quarterly Canadian publication, and I have loved Uppercase for years. This is, first of all, It's just like high quality. Like this is like nice cardstock. The colors are always gorgeous. The spines are all coordinated. I'll pop up a picture of where these sit on my wall in my office so you can see how beautiful they all look when they're stacked. So Uppercase is a magazine, as it says, for the creative and curious. And this magazine is just full of pure joy. Like just look at this spread. Like it's just so good for flipping through for like inspiration. Like look what's happening with these little mushroom guys. Like look at this. Here's a feature about an artist who works in crayons. Here's a feature on calligraphy. It's kind of getting into all of these different crafts. But then it also will have kind of cute little features of just like, here's sort of like a history of different stationery bits and bobs. Here is a feature on old Victorian cards, just going through the history of that and sort of using it as creative inspiration. There's also a feature in every issue called Subscriber Studios, where they feature photos of the studio of one of their subscribers, which I think is just always so fun to like peek into other people's creative spaces. I'm just gonna like flip through just so you can get a sense of the like fun and color and eye candy. Like just, this is just a truly beautifully designed magazine. Like as a graphic designer, it's incredibly evident to me that the founder of Uppercase magazine is also a graphic designer first and foremost, because I feel like it just shows in every single detail of this magazine. It's just so incredibly well laid out. So for an annual subscription of 4 issues shipped to either Canada or the US, this one costs $96 Canadian or $63 US, or if it's shipping internationally, it's about $103 US. It is just like a feast for the eyes. Recommend. All right, so our next sort of subcategory of gift ideas, I think that one of the best kinds of gifts to get someone is either like an upgrade of something that they already have and use a lot, or something that just would upgrade the experience of something they already do. You know, the kinds of things that I think a lot of us tend to hesitate to buy for ourselves just because it feels like an unnecessary splurge. These are the perfect things to get for someone. So I have a few different suggestions to give you within this realm. One very specifically is the Cocoa Knits Pringle. Now, this goes for $28 US. And if you're looking at this going like, what am I looking at? What's happening? Every knitter has some sort of system that they're currently using for blocking their knits. If you're not a knitter, this just means that when you're finished knitting, you need to get it wet and then lay it out nicely to dry, making sure it's kind of stretched to like the shape and dimensions that you want it to be when it's done. The problem is that wool takes so long to dry. The Cocoa Knits Pringle. Okay, this thing, I want one of these. I don't have one of these. I covet these because the Cocoa Knits Pringle allows you to lay your sweater on top of this. It is not making contact with whatever is below it, which means that air is circulating on all sides, which means that your knits are going to dry faster. And I think a lot of knitters really dislike the blogging process just because we are impatient. When we have finished spending 100 hours making a sweater, we want to wear it. We don't want to spend 2 days waiting for it to dry. So the idea of being able to lay your garment out on this and it dries faster just sounds delightful. Another option in this category, I'm just going to say everything from Thread and Maple. Thread and Maple is a little Canadian company that just makes these beautiful sort of knitting notion tool cases out of both leather and cork. So like they have this beautiful little case that just holds like your scissors and your tapestry needles nicely together. So they're not getting lost, you're not rummaging around. If your knitter has ever left a tapestry needle somewhere that you find to be dangerous, this is a great thing to get them. This is $62 Canadian, which converts out to about $42 US. They also have these beautiful little stitch marker cases. There's a leather version, there's a zippered leather version, there's a cork version, and these cost between $15 and $19 Canadian, or about $11 and $14 US. But really, I just recommend like browsing their entire website because they just have so many cute little things like this, and just depending on the exact kinds of notions that you or your knitter use a lot, just depending on the exact kind of knitting that they do, one may make more sense than the other, but they're just all adorable. All just like very cute, classy, upgraded versions of the, you know, like middle school pencil case they might currently be using, or worse, the nothing they're currently using and leaving stuff scattered all over, and maybe you'd like them to contain them nicely. Then there are project bags. So bags that knitters use to contain the thing that they're working on. And that means that if a knitter is prone to working on multiple different projects at a time, that means needing multiple project bags. I've never managed to justify it to myself to go out and buy like a cute knitting project bag. I am just using the like random drawstring bags that like come to one in one's life. But would I be very happy to receive a very cute project bag, perhaps one even tailored to an interest of mine, like maybe houseplants, like maybe abstract art? Yeah, I would be pretty pleased with that. So you can find all different kinds of options for these on Etsy. You can also find them if there's ever any kind of yarn festival near you. There are tons of different makers of these there at those events. But just to give you a couple specific directions to start looking in, Stony Creek Knitters on Etsy has some really cute ones for $45 Canadian, which is about $32 US. They're the ones with the house plants, some nice flowery ones. And then Craxi Designs also has some nice ones for $49 Canadian or about 35 US. So there's this cute goose one and that abstract one, as well as lots of others. All right, now we're gonna get into some stocking stuffer options. And this is when we're gonna circle back to what's in my mug today, because today I'm drinking the Keats & Co. Earl Grey, and I'm recommending Keats & Co. as a great stocking stuffer option because show me a knitter who does not like drinking either tea or coffee while they knit, right? Like, it's just part of the cozy package. And speaking of package, I feel like when it comes to gift giving, I love gifting consumables like tea and coffee because you know someone's gonna use it. It's not just like more stuff that's just gonna accumulate in their house. But I find that often the difference between what makes something feel giftable versus just like something you picked up at the grocery store is the packaging. Just, does it look nice? You know, does it feel like a sort of aesthetic experience? And I feel like Keats & Co. really brings that to the table. Their bags have a beautiful design. They have a nice sort of like sleek matte finish. You know what I mean? Like, they just feel like a beautiful object. And I actually kind of resent right now that I don't currently have one to show you because I poured mine into a tin when I got it. But you just have to trust me. They're so nice in person. I feel like they would be a great addition to a stocking. And on the theme of trying to do some good with our gift purchases, I love Keats & Co. because, I mean, in addition to like, obviously the tea is delicious, or I wouldn't be sitting here drinking and telling you about it, because 100% of their profits go to charity to support Partners in Health in making access to tuberculosis treatment more equitable worldwide. So bags of tea or coffee from Keats & Co. go for $25 US or $36 Canadian. I also have a coupon code for this one, so if you use my code Allison Rowan, you can get 25% off your order, which is sweet. Another great stocking stuffer option is stitch markers or progress keepers. If you're not a knitter, stitch markers are things that people tend to need a lot of. You might be using a dozen of them or more in a project just to keep track of different divisions in the pattern. And then progress keepers are kind of the fun dangly ones that in most cases you'd only have one hanging off a project at a time. These are often used to mark the beginning of a row on a project where it's being knit in the round, so it's just going in a circle and you need to know when you're starting a new row. Or they can be used just to keep track of like, oh, here's where I stopped last time, and then as you knit, you just see how far you got from that point, so you know like how much you knit today or this week or whatever you're trying to keep track of. So these to me are sort of in the category of thing that like, even if your knitter already has these, you can kind of never have too many, because like bobby pins, these things tend to disappear. Okay. So there's just, I don't think there's such thing as too many of these. So one nice option for these is the flight of stitch markers from Coco Knits. So if you're thinking about buying that Pringle from Coco Knits, you can bundle these together, save on some shipping fees. This set goes for $24 US, and it gives you this nice selection of a few different shapes of stitch markers that are kind of useful at different times for different things. And this is actually the set of stitch markers that I have. I really like these. And then as far as the sort of like more fun dangly progress keepers, much like project bags, there are a million people who make these on Etsy at different fiber festivals, all of that. But I'll just give you a couple suggestions for places to start looking. One is called Celebrity Sighting. This is a Canadian Etsy shop, so if you're in Canada, this one's probably your best bet to order from. They have all kinds of different themes. They have Pokemon ones, they have houseplant ones, they have bird ones. So I think this is a category where if you can come up with a non-knitting related interest or hobby of your knitter and then find them little progress keepers that relate to that, I think that's such a cute like fusion of interests. I think that's really fun. The shop also lets you choose which kind of ring or clasp you want on these, which is a really nice detail if you know what your knitter prefers or what you want to ask your family for if you are the knitter. But if you're unsure, I would recommend the clasp version just because it kind of gives the most options to the knitter using it. So these ones are from Celebrity Sighting on Etsy, and they run $9.99 Canadian per set, which is about $7 US. Another Etsy shop option, this one based in the US, is called Seashell Crafter, and they have some cats who are reading. They have ones for all kinds of different dog breeds. So if you can find a dog that looks like your knitter's dog and a progress keeper, that's so cute. They have this little honeybee set. Now these sets tend to include a few more pieces than the other shops. So these sets run between $14 and $20 Canadian, or about $10 to $14 US. Another stocking stuffer option, and this one kind of overlaps with the idea of like ugly basic things people currently have, is cute measuring tapes or scissors. So like you saw how excited I was when I found those cute little scissors in the hooks and needles box. I think that things like that are really good stocking stuffers. So on the scissors front, I would recommend either that classic sort of like stork design, or there are also some very sort of like modern clean versions that are also really, really nice. And both of these options you can get for like $10 Canadian or about $7 US. I also feel like scissors and measuring tape are a thing where like, yes, there's definitely such thing as too many. You don't need 10 of them, but it might be nice to have 2 or 3 that can float around different project bags and not always be searching around for your one pair that is never where you think that you put it. On the measuring tape front, the Coco Knits Pebbles. So again, if you're looking at the Pringle, if you're looking at the Coco Knits stitch markers, these would all make a really nice set. This measuring tape is the one that I actually have. I love this measuring tape. It's really nice and compact. It goes for $22 Canadian or $15 US. Another option is the ChiaoGoo measuring tape, which goes for $9 Canadian or $6 US. I don't have this one personally, but I think it looks really cute. My next suggestion for stocking stuffer is kind of a suggestion to myself because I need to be better about using hand cream. And maybe the knitter in your life also needs to be better at using hand cream because I think that working with your hands a lot can dry them out in general, but also if your hands are dried out, that makes for a difficult knitting process because especially as we get into winter and skin gets dry and starts cracking a little bit, your yarn can actually snag on that, and that's a very frustrating experience. And it would be better for us if our hands were properly hydrated anyway. So this is an option where like it feels kind of ridiculous to link you to anything specific because there's a million hand creams in the world. There are also lots of cute ones that I know I've just seen in random little gift shops that like say funny things on them. This would be a great one to just sort of wander into whatever is your like local boutique-y gift shoppy place and just go see what they have for hand cream. There's probably something made by some local little artisan business. But if you're panicking and you just need like an easy suggestion that you can just order online right now, there is a yarn brand called Filcolana that actually makes a hand cream. So I think that's kind of fun because it's very directly related to knitting. And the hand cream itself actually has lanolin in it. If you're not a knitter, lanolin is the natural oil in wool. It's kind of what has all these like magical properties that make wool very like antibacterial and very insulating. It is just where the magic of the wool lives. So the hand cream is using that to help moisturize your hands. So that's just sort of a fun like knitting hand cream crossover option. So I'll link that one below. But again, this could be like literally any hand cream, though I guess I would suggest one that feels less sort of like greasy and wet on your hands when it's done, because if you're moisturizing your hands to knit, you do want to be able to like get back to your knitting quickly and not feel like you're like greasing up what you're working on. So I guess that's my one sort of like suggestion to narrow things down a little. Now lastly in the stocking stuffer category, knitting snacks. Whatever your knitter likes to snack on while they're knitting, that's a great stocking stuffer, especially if you're kind of putting together like a sort of knitter's kit of things, you know, a stocking that might sort of foster an environment of the perfect knitting afternoon. So maybe there's some tea in there, maybe there's a hand cream in there, maybe there's some stitch markers in there, and some M&Ms or whatever it is that your knitter would like to snack on. Now I will say one recommended criteria here is try to avoid anything that is very powdery that would leave a residue because we need clean hands for knitting. So like maybe Cheetos aren't a good idea unless your knitter is accustomed to using chopsticks while knitting to eat these snacks, which I confess that I maybe do sometimes when I want to snack on something powdery while I'm knitting and keep my hands clean. It's very effective. Okay, now we're gonna get into some gift ideas for big ticket items. So these are only for if you're looking to spend some serious money on the knitter in your life. So the first thing I have to recommend, if the knitter in your life does not already have a set of interchangeable circular needles, this is a fantastic splurge gift, because if they have just been accumulating different random needles kind of project by project and never quite know what they have and are always having to run out and get a new set of needles every time they want to start a different pattern, and maybe they even have needles that are the right size but the cord is not the right length, like a set of interchangeable needles is a game changer. So if you don't know what this means, interchangeable needles are sets of different sizes of needles that unscrew from the cords, and they come with different lengths of cords. So you have every size needle you're likely to need and every length of cord you're likely to need. So you can just mix and match whatever you need for whatever project, and it comes with a beautiful case to keep it all together, so you don't have to rummage around through your million different things trying to see if you have what you need, and you are just set. Now, a couple things you need to know if you're not a knitter and if you're looking for one of these. Number one, you will find in looking at interchangeable needle sets that they come in a few different lengths. You will commonly see 5-inch interchangeables and 3.5-inch interchangeables. You'll also sometimes see 6-inch interchangeables. Now, unless you're under very specific direction otherwise, 5 inches are the ones that you are looking for. These are sort of the standard. The 3.5 and the 6-inch are sort of special use cases. So unless you know for a fact that your knitter happens to be a person who uses those, do not buy those. Buy the 5-inch ones. The second thing you need to know is, does your knitter knit with wood needles or with metal needles? Because this is a very strong personal preference thing. A lot of people who use one do not want to use the other. So you need to know which kind of needle you're shopping for. So once you've established that, if your knitter likes metal needles, I would personally recommend the Luca Cypress set. This is a set that I use personally, and in addition to being really nice metal needles to work with, they're just beautiful. Like, they're this gorgeous copper color. They come in a nice suede case. There's a brown option and a black version, and I feel like it's just stunning. Like, it's just a very high impact gift option. So this goes for $199.99 Canadian, or closer to $150 in US dollars. Luca also has sets of wood needles, and wood needles run a little bit less expensive. So if your knitter prefers wood needles, lucky you. And they have this really beautiful neutral colored driftwood set that goes for $164.99 Canadian, or about 120 US. But they also have a few different fun color options for wood needles. I think there's an all blue set, there's an all pink set, but I'm gonna highlight this fun rainbow set, which goes for $199.99 Canadian, or again, closer to 150 US. So interchangeable needle sets are definitely a pricey investment, but this is why I think if you're looking for a big ticket gift item, this is a classic thing that is sometimes hard for people to justify buying for themselves, but is so nice to have. So honestly, if your knitter doesn't have one, this is what I would recommend above anything else in the big ticket item category. Another option though, either if your knitter doesn't have an interchangeable set, but really has accumulated everything they could ever need in different individual circulars, they're just kind of all over the place, or if your knitter does have an interchangeable set, but they also have a lot of other sort of paraphernalia tools floating around, the Thread and Maple needle binder. So Thread and Maple, we talked about a bit earlier with the little like leather and cork accessories. They make this stunning leather binder that you can customize with different like pages that hold different kinds of things to keep all of the tools and notions organized in one cohesive and tidy place. And they're just so beautiful. I am so compelled by the like organization of it, all the little pockets. And I think the fact that you can choose these different insert pages to customize it with makes it really either flexible to build the perfect one right now if you feel like you really know which version of it your knitter needs, or you can also buy just sort of the base version of it and then allow this to be a gift that you continue to give over time as you figure out which pages they might like to add into it, and maybe that's their next birthday gift or their next holiday gift or whatever, and you keep building it over time. So like I said, big ticket item, the base version of this goes for $209 Canadian, and then for each page you want to add in, it's going to be between $61 to $119 depending on which page it is you're adding, and that converts out to about $150 US for the base binder, and then $43 to $85 US for each page you add in. So this one really is like a huge treat, a splurge. It's just a beautiful object that also is so functional and might also keep you from like accidentally sitting on and getting stabbed by the knitting needles that your knitter left on the couch, but like maybe, like I can't promise that they will put it in every time, but maybe. Okay, my next big suggestion is a ball winder if your knitter doesn't already have one. Now, some knitters won't need a ball winder if they're always buying yarn that comes in a format you can pull directly from. But if your knitter is ever buying yarn that comes looking like this, then it means that they are needing to in some way wind their yarn before they can use it, because you cannot knit from that. And if you don't have a ball winder, this is a very tedious process. Hand winding and rotating, and it takes so long, especially if you're using a very fine yarn. So there's a lot of yardage in a skein. So a ball winder is just a really nice time saver, but they're also pricey enough that, again, I feel like a lot of people can struggle to buy these for themselves. Now, there are lots of different versions of this, but the one that I can recommend from personal experience and that I also think makes a really beautiful gifted option is the ball winder from Luca, because it's just this beautiful wood. Like, it's just a nice object to look at. It's not only functional. So this one goes for $129 Canadian, which converts to about $90 US. And this is just something that I feel like can sit out on a table, and it's not an eyesore, right? It is like a feature. It is an item on display. It is also genuinely useful. And the next time that your knitter needs to wind up some yarn, it's going to be so much better than doing it by hand. There are also versions of ball winders that are electric, so instead of having to hand crank it, it actually does that for you. Personally though, I quite like the hand crank, because it still goes fast enough that I don't feel like, oh my god, I can't do this anymore, I wish this was doing it on its own, but also because it just keeps you directly involved and in control in a way where, like, I think with a machine I would be worried about when it hits a snag, is it going to rip the yarn or kind of create like a tangled mess? So for that reason, I kind of prefer the manual version, plus they tend to be cuter. Now, possible add-on to this gift is a Swift, which is a thing like this that looks like an umbrella that holds your unwound yarn while the ball winder is winding it into a ball, and it sort of like spins as the ball winder pulls from it. So this is a really nice addition because it does that for you, because you don't have to find something to drape your yarn over, whether that's like your knees spread apart just the right amount while you're like sitting, or someone else's hands while you're winding, or the back of a chair that like happens to be the right size. But I would say I think a Swift is really only a great option if the person that you're gifting it to like has space for it to exist in, because these are not small objects, right? Many of them are collapsible, but then I also feel like if it's something you have to like take down and put away and like set up every time you want to use it, that kind of is a knock on its appeal. And even just storing it collapsed, it's not like it takes up no space. So if your knitter has a craft room or even just like a living room with some space where, like, again, if you get them a nice one, it can be a nice object in the room, great. But if your knitter lives in like a studio apartment, maybe not the best fit. But if you do think it's a good idea for them, Luca also makes a matching Swift for their ball winder, and it goes for about $68 Canadian or about $50 US. Okay, now my very last gift idea, our last big ticket item, this one I've saved for last in part because it is the most difficult one. Like, you really have to have the most knowledge about your knitter and what they like to knit in order to pull this one off well. I don't recommend doing this one based off of guesswork. That will probably be a waste of your money. But if you can get the right info, a sweater's quantity of nice yarn would be so good. But like I said, you need to know a lot of things. So you either need to like live with your knitter and see what they're knitting all the time so that you can figure this out, or have access to someone who does. You can ask them those things, or be willing to let go of the element of surprise and ask your knitter directly. So what you need to know, first of all, what kind of yarn do they like? What do they like to knit out of? So this might be pure wool. It might be pure superwash wool, or specifically non-superwash wool. It might also be not pure wool because maybe they find wool itchy. Maybe it's mohair. Maybe it's not mohair because they find mohair itchy. Maybe they prefer alpaca. Maybe they prefer a wool nylon blend. Maybe they don't like nylon. Maybe they prefer plant-based fibers. Even just within wool, do they prefer a rustic wool? Do they like a fine merino? Do they prefer knitting with a really chunky yarn? Do they like a really thin yarn? So there are just so many variables, even just in this one category, just what kind of yarn they want, that do you see why I'm suggesting you don't guess here? Because we don't want you to spend all this money on yarn that your knitter's not going to want to use. The second thing you need to know is what kind of colors they like to knit with. Do they like to knit with natural sheepy colors, undyed yarn? Do they like to knit in really bright colors? Do they like to knit in pastels? Do they like to knit in jewel tones? Maybe they like earthy tones. What kind of colors does your knitter like to knit with and wear? And then lastly, you also need to know how many skeins is a sweater's quantity. How much of this yarn do you need to buy them to make a whole garment? And this number is going to depend on the size of the yarn they like to work with, and it's also going to depend on their clothing size. So this is one where, again, you might have to ask the knitter directly, or you might be able to suss out if you live with them or if you have access to someone who does. You might be able to just sort of sneak in an offhand question of like, oh, how many balls of yarn went into that sweater that you made? And in answering this question, I would say always, always, always err on the side of too much yarn, because no one likes getting most of the way through a project and not being able to finish it because you don't have enough yarn. So always err on the side of generosity when buying a sweater's quantity of yarn. So like I said, that one's definitely the most difficult one to pull off. You need the most knowledge that I cannot give you because it's so dependent on who exactly you're buying for. So this option is not for the faint of heart. And there we have it. That is my complete list of gift ideas for the knitter in your life, or if you are the knitter, maybe you could forward these ideas along to your friends and family who keep asking you for gift ideas. I would also love to know, if you are a knitter, what are some things that weren't on this list that you would include on your wish list? Leave those in the comments down below. And if you are someone who is shopping for a knitter and you're looking for more ideas, take a look down below to see what other people are suggesting in the comments as well. All right, that's all I've got for you today. So I hope this has helped you get some of your holiday shopping sorted. Thanks so much for watching. And if you'd like to be here next time, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you're not already. If you are though, you're my favorite. And I'll see you next time. Bye.